This recording is going to look at how you can draw student names and match them up with email addresses based on the total number of absences that they have for a period of time. So let's say that you've been keeping attendance and you have some column or a column that tells you, how many times the students have been absent in a certain period of time. And this could be any length. In this case, it's just a week, but it could be, you could do it over a month or a grading period or however long you wanted to. So you have all these totals here and you want to email the parents of the students that have a certain number of absences or greater. So in this case, let's say that I want to email anybody who has, and I'll add a couple absences here. I want to email the parents of anybody who has more than two or more absences for this particular time. Now I could look here and see, okay, that's student 1, student 2, and student 4, and then go try to find their emails, but that's pretty time consuming. So a faster way to set it up to kind of automatically do this is I'm going to go to my roster where I have all of my students listed here with all their information. So it has their parent email addresses, their email addresses, home phone numbers, things like that. Then I'm going to create a column called absences. And again, I'm going to use my query formula, and I'm going to add a query formula here. And instead of using the data here, I'm going to go back and use the data on my attendance sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these columns, A through H, that have all this information in them. Then I'm going to put a comma. After I put the comma, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to use again a select formula because I want to select this column H right here, which is the total number of absences. So I'm going to say select H, which refers to that column, where. Now what I need to do is I need to match the first and the last name to the first and the last name on my roster sheet where I have all the information for everybody. So I'm going to still refer to the column. So we're going to refer to the column here. H is the one that I want to pull from, but I want to do where A, which is the column where their first name is. And then I'm going to write the word matches. So matches tells me it's going to look for exactly that name. Now in this case, all their names are student, but it'll come into play with column B here in just a second. This is also helpful if you have multiple students with the same first name in a class. So you're going to say select H where A matches. This one's a little weird. You're going to put 3 quotation marks and then an ampersand. And then on my other sheet, first and last name are also in columns A and B. So I'm going to put A2. You're going to notice that's purple, and it's purple because it's not referring to anything on this sheet. It's referring to something on the original sheet, which we'll go back and look at in a minute. So I'm going to put where A matches A2, and then do another ampersand, and then 3 more quotation marks. The reason you do the weird quotation mark and ampersand combination is that will allow it to look for things that contain punctuation. So for instance, if you have a student who has a name that has an apostrophe in it, this will still look through there, or a hyphen or anything like that. If you don't do this, when it encounters a value that has an apostrophe or a hyphen or something like that, it returns an error. So that's where this basically is going to say select A where H matches A, or where A matches A2 on the original sheet. Now if I close it out right there, I'm going to need to put 1 more quotation mark and then close the parentheses. After I hit enter, it's going to take me back to the original. Now in this case, it's actually filled out all of them because it's pulled every single one because they all have the same first name. Obviously that's normally not going to be good, but I did want to get back to this sheet for a minute. So instead of doing that, for that last quotation mark, I'm going to add the word and to say I'm going to match by something else as well. B, because again, B is where the last name is on both, matches. And again, I'm going to do the 3 quotation marks, an ampersand, and then I'm going to do B2, which again turns that light blue shade, and then 3 more quotation marks. And I forgot to add the ampersand here, but there goes an ampersand right here. Because again, what this is going to refer to is, and it's already highlighted it back here, is the last name there. So this is going to be checking to make sure that it's going to select H where the total absences are, where A matches A2, so where the first name matches the first name here, and where B matches B2, where the last name matches the last name here. And now if I hit enter, it only pulls the one for that student. So that's going to be pulling for this student. They have 2 absences. And if I go back to my attendance sheet, you'll notice they have 2 absences here. Now if that changes, or if you change the value, so like over the course of a grading period or something like that, if let's say they wound up with 3 absences, when I go back here, that has also already updated to 3. So it can kind of be a rolling counter for where they are. I'm going to drag this formula down to copy it, and what it's going to do is now it's looking at everyone because it's going row by row. So for instance, student 3 is showing 0 absences, and back here they also have 0 absences. So it's going to update that for each row that you have there. So now that you have the total count on here for each student having that, what I would do is create another one. I've created this tab called absence email, and I'm going to run one because I just want the email addresses of the students that have 2 or more. If they don't have 2 or more, I'm not going to send an email to them because I don't need to check on them. They've only been absent, either not been absent or only been absent once. I'm just going to want to send in a check-in email for the ones that have been absent an excessive number of times. So if I go back to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run again a query formula, and I'm going to put equals query open parentheses. Now for my data set, I'm going to go back to roster, and again I'm going to select all of the columns here on roster just so I can access any of the data that I need to. And in this case, this is going to be a much simpler one. I'm simply going to tell it to select, in this case I'm going to say D because that's the parent email, and I'm going to say select D where I'm going to reference column G because that has the absence count in it, and I'm going to put G is greater than 1. And the reason I'm going to put greater than 1 is that way it won't count 1s or anything less than 1, but it will count 2 or anything higher than that. So where G is greater than 1, then I'm going to do my last quotation mark, close the parentheses, and again when I hit enter, it has now drawn me the parent emails for students 1, 2, and 4, who if I go back here, students 1, 2, and 4 were my 3 students that had an excessive number of absences. So this is a great way you can just get the email addresses that you want to email for that particular thing. Now again, as things change, this will add it in real time. So for instance, let's say that as I added through a grading period, I had some other students that got up to that level. So let's take to student 5 and then maybe student 8. Now if I go back to this absence email, it's already added their email addresses to that. So if they had added to that, I could do that. You could also tell it to reference different columns if you wanted to. That way if you needed to look at a different time range for something that you had already done.